It feels so good to finally add another building to my medieval town. This one's got a really cool vibe to it and has a lot of modular pieces that allow it to be able to be transformed from a stable into other buildings like a guild hall, a library, and more. You want to see how I do it? Stick around because we're building it this week on Tabletop Witchcraft. Hey there, and welcome back to Tabletop Witchcraft. Does it feel good to have this finally done and on the shelf? This is a very unique piece that I built. I've got a set of plans. If you want to follow along in the video, you can find them in the description below. And I'll tell you, when it came to the paint scheme on this, I really wanted to step outside the box and go with something totally different instead of just grays and browns for a barn. Now, I also have a hidden agenda, which is why I painted it this color, but you're just going to have to subscribe to the channel and stick around to find out exactly why I painted it this way. Now, if you watch the video and you're like, man, these are really cool windows and the shingles and, the trim and all this stuff on here, where can I get it all? You can get it all at Shiftinglands. Now, in a couple of weeks, they're actually going to put together a Tabletop Witchcraft stable pack. So as you're watching the video, you're going to see all these different windows and shingles and all that. You don't have to worry about it if you go to their site. All you have to do is click on the one link that's going to be there again in a couple of weeks, and it's going to give you everything you need to follow and build along with me. Now, I also want to thank Anycubic for supplying the brand new FDM Viper back here. That thing printed totally awesome, and it's amazing how easy it is to set that thing up right out of the box. 1, 2, 3. It took me like an hour, and I had that thing up and running. The software was pretty easy to use, and I want to thank TigerSkullRPG for supplying this file right here for the horse that's on top of the stable. If you want to check him out on Instagram, do so. Also on Patreon. Just by joining him on Patreon, you're going to get this mini along with a whole bunch of other really cool ones. So with that, if you want to try and win a set of plans, head on over to Instagram while you're over there and follow me on Instagram. All you have to do is like the video, leave a comment, and follow me there, because that's where I'm going to announce the winner next week in my story. All right, if you're ready, let's go grab some supplies and let's get crafting. All right, so this video got me really excited because it's always fun and exciting to add to your village collection. And this is something that I've been wanting to add for quite some time now, which is the stable. And the cool thing is that this building can really be used multi-purpose for a lot of different things, a guild hall, right? The stable, a library, all kinds of stuff. So what we're going to start with doing is grabbing the footprint for this build, and we're going to cut it out from the plans, and then we're just going to trace that over onto some XPS foam. You can find a link in the description below to where you can pick up these plans if you want to help support the channel. Really appreciate that help. Now, a cool little thing that I got just after I finished this video was a box from Proxxon that actually had the foot pedal in it, and I've hooked that thing up since working on this video, and I have to tell you, I don't know how I have crafted without this thing. The foot pedal makes it so much easier to make intricate cuts. So anyway, if you haven't picked one up, if you have a Proxxon, definitely look into the foot pedal. You can see right here how if I had the foot pedal, it would have been so much easier making a lot of these cuts, starting and stopping the Proxxon. Alright, so now just following the plan, we're going to make all our foam cuts for our walls, and then we're going to pin them with some toothpicks, and I'm using some hot glue. Now, using the plan, we can make sure that all of our walls are square as well. So you don't have to just use the plans to make sure you're cutting the right size, but you also use them to make sure you're lining things up properly. Alright, now we're already on to the second floor of the building. Like the first floor, the footprint, we're just going to cut this out using the stencil. And here, typically I'll add toothpicks to secure it, but this really isn't going anywhere. And, if you're going to use toothpicks, you really should use tacky glue. I'm using some hot glue to kind of keep moving here on the project. So toothpicks really would be a problem because this sets up way too quick, the hot glue, and way too much of a chance to screw something up. Alright, we're working our way up now to this really funky little section of wall. for the second story. You can see how the plans are helpful when you're working on these types of cuts. So we're going to make use of some other Shiftinglands tools in this video. This tool right here, absolutely awesome. I'll have a link down below to Shiftinglands where you can go and check out all these cool items. They also have a shop now in the US, so for anybody over here, you can pick these things up and save on some shipping costs. And you can see just how awesome and easy it is to get the right angle mirrored perfectly on the right and left side of this building using that tool. Alright, now we're just going to keep using the plans and working our way up. And while I have you here on the whole Shiftinglands topic, coming out very soon, you'll be able to go to Shiftinglands and actually pick up the stable pack from Shiftinglands for this video. So when I start working with shingles and windows and trim and all that kind of stuff, you don't have to try and figure out exactly what I used. You can go to like the Tabletop Witchcraft stable pack on their site and just pick that up, and you'll have everything you need if you want to build this exactly the way you see here in the video. Now back to the Shiftingland tool, you can see how it even cuts dollar store foam core really nice, and you get that really nice seam for the roof. And again, working with hot glue. Every time you see me work with hot glue like this, I always dry fit everything 2 or 3 times to make sure it's absolutely perfect, because you only have, I'd say, 10 seconds tops to work with hot glue before it sets up on you. Alright, now this was a tricky piece, not only to craft, but to design on the computer. So just, take this step by step. Take a look at what I'm doing here. We're going to cut this out. I tried doing it in separate pieces and, pinning them together with toothpicks. Didn't work out well, so I decided to just make the entire top of this one solid block of foam. Alright, now, as per the plans, it was a little too thick, so I just shaved off a little section of that on the Proxxon. Using the stencil, we're going to do this to both sides. You can see I've already cut this V shape out on the other side. And it's going to be off by just a little bit when you're working at a funky angle like this, but it's going to get you close enough to where you can make those cuts and keep moving on. Alright, now these are going to be the little dormers that are going to stick out over the edge of that little roof line. So the first thing we did was make sure we got the thickness correct, and now we're cutting out the shape. And not all the time do you need to use a Proxxon here. Obviously you can see I'm just using an Alpha knife to make these cuts. Just be very careful. You don't get my middle finger right there with this. I've done that before. Alright, so now we've traced out what we want to leave on here for the top of that roof. And I'm just using an X-Acto to get this as close as I can to the shape that I want for the top of the roof. Get it as close as you can. Don't worry about if you screw up a little bit. There's going to be room to make adjustments later on with some chipboard and then when we add our shingles. And this is where it comes in handy for saving all of your chipboard and all your scraps. You can see this weird little piece that I need to cut out. It was nice to not have to dig into a brand new 12-inch, by 12-inch piece of chipboard. And obviously you can see where you don't always have to make every craft entirely out of foam. Work with different media, whatever you have handy. I want to use some chipboard here. I want something a little bit more sturdy to kind of help that ridgeline of that roof hold together a little bit better. Alright, back to our plans. Now we're going to work on the left and right portions of the building. This is where I envision the horses for the stable being kept, right, on the left and right side. I cut these out of just some 2-inch XPS foam, and you'll see they'll fit nicely on each side of that footprint. Now making sure to wear a mask. Whenever you texture foam like this for wood grain, it's always 100% guaranteed to leave very fine particles of foam, and you don't want to breathe those in because that's not going to break down in your lungs. So once we have our wood texture on there, now we're just going to add a little bit of trim around the building. And this is where you get creative, because all you're trying to do really is cover up any type of, long line or seam or breaks in foam. And these are the windows that I talked about earlier from Shiftinglands. As a matter of fact, all the windows in this video are from Shiftinglands, and Scott from Shiftinglands, he also designed a really cool horse window that you're going to see here in just a few minutes for this build. Okay, and at this stage, we're not gluing any of these windows in yet. Now, of course, what kind of video would this be without LEDs, right? So what I want to do is I want to hollow out a section just for a few of these windows to have some lights flickering on the inside. And make sure to do this over a vent or a hood where you have really good ventilation so you're not breathing in all that fumes. And going to my handy clay sculpting tools, we're just going to use that to pop out the pieces of foam that we don't want in there. Alright, back to a really nice sharp X-Acto that you have installed properly. We're going to cut out these windows, and those will be all set. And don't worry about if they're a little jagged. You're not going to see behind these windows anyway, because we're going to frost them up a little bit to really disperse the light. And then on the back side, I went through the window to make sure I had a nice straight hole going through there. We're going to poke a hole, because that's where our LED is going to come through later on in the video. Then, making sure not to get any glue in that hole, we're going to place this piece on, and we're good to go. And then obviously we'll just replicate that on the other side with a couple different windows where I have cut out for some LEDs. And again, what tabletop witchcraft video would this be without magnets, right? So using this clay sculpting tool and this little trick that I talked about a while ago to ensure that your magnets always go in properly. We're just going to place them in, smear a little glue over the top, and they're set, and they will never come out. And again, this is where I talked about just hiding seams in the foam. You can see I placed a couple close pieces of trim on this, and it's really just to hide that line of the second floor piece of foam that I've glued to the top of the wall. And clay sculpting tools are a great tool to remove excess hot glue when you're working with a craft. Alright, now this was kind of a little tricky piece that you have to get on here. It might take you 1 or 2 tries with some trim just to get it cut out right, because you actually have to put a little arc on that piece of trim because of the roof line, but not a big deal. Sharp X-Acto, and you should get there pretty quickly. Alright, now on to another tool that you'll get in the pack if you pick up the Stables pack over at Shiftinglands, is going to be the hot new item that you've seen all over Instagram and on the Shiftinglands site is their pillar jigs that they have. This is an amazing little invention that will quickly transform any okay craft into an amazing craft, because all you need to do is cut out a rectangular piece of foam, stick it in this thing, and then cut it out either on a Proxxon or a hot wire knife, and you instantly have an intricate, cool looking pillar that you can add to any craft, and it really does enhance the overall look of anything that you're working on. That would be really hard to achieve freehand. Okay, now I needed maybe about another, I'd say 1/8 of an inch on the top of this block for this build, so I just cut a couple of those out and glued them in place. And then I split them in half on the Proxxon, because as you can see, they're just going to get slid right into place around all the corners of this build on the first floor and the second floor as well. Now when you hot glue these in place, make sure not to put any hot glue on the very bottom of that pillar, because again, obviously we have some magnets in there to be able to remove this. We have a playable interior. Do that on the first floor and the second floor as well. And again, you can see just how cool this looks. I mean, it would have looked good with square corners, but the intricate pillars on all corners of this really like instantly enhances how cool this thing looks very quickly. All right, now I had a bunch of these pieces left over. You know, I want to use them up, so I thought, why not keep using these, and we're gonna add them as some cool little pieces of architectural feel around the top of the stable. And I'm adding some of these toothpicks in here just so that these don't snap off and break easily. I've pre-tapped these holes underneath the corner right here, and then you just slide those right in with some hot glue, and they're not gonna go anywhere. And they really add a nice look around the edge of the building. Alright, now we get to start gluing some more of the roof pieces on here, getting ready to add some shingles to the build. Alright, I added a little bit more trim off camera just to kind of, you know, make it a little bit more interesting looking on that top piece. Now we're going to another Shiftinglands tool, the circle jig, and we're going to cut this dimension out here on it because this is going to be the trim that's going to go around our very special windows that's really going to sell this stable. Look how beautiful that is. That was designed by Shiftinglands specifically for this building, and these came out really awesome. Really happy with that design. Alright, now I want to fill the top of this roof line here with something. Just kind of pause the video and take a look at what I've made there. I'm going to put a little arc to the bottom of that big piece of what's going to look like wood here when we're done. Now this is also a door that was designed for this building by Shiftinglands. I'll show you how to put it together right here. Very simple. And it also comes with the ability to actually have the door open and close, which is really cool. And I thought about putting that into this build and building that jam into the foam, and it's definitely possible, but the stage that I was at on the build, and I was running a little behind, I'd opted just to glue the doors in and not have them actually open and close. But as you can see, that'd be really easy to cut a slit into the bottom of the foam and work that in. Okay, now setting the build aside, we can work on the front steps and the rear ramp to this building. So that's just a 1/2 inch piece of XPS foam. Cut that right in half. That way it marries up perfectly with the threshold of the door on the building. So we'll cut that piece out. You can see I made it wavy on purpose because this is going to be stone. I didn't want them exactly circular. Using my favorite tool here for texturing foam, I'm going to add some rock texture to that. And I'm also going to do the same here in just a second on the top piece. Now I wanted big flagstones. I didn't want little bricks. And to be honest, you know, it's a little bit easier, right, if we're working with bigger stones here. So all I'm doing is tracing out how I want the stairs to look. Now, if you look back at my alchemy shop, I absolutely loved the way the stone looked, right? Because they were individual stones on that building. I had a lot of time into this build, and I really wanted that look. I didn't want to just, you know, draw in the stonework. So you can see I numbered the stone pattern on the bottom of that, and I actually cut all those out individually. I rounded the corners, and now I'm going to glue them back together to give that look that they're all separate stones. And it really does look cool and different doing it this way. And again, make sure you don't glue this to the building. We're going to have magnets that are going to snap this piece on and off. Alright, 1/2 inch piece of XPS foam. I used the Shiftinglands angle cutter just to kind of cut that piece right there. And then very simply, that'll slide in place. We're going to just draw some wood boards on here. You can see I really roughed them up here in the middle. I wanted that to look like all the horses, you know, going in and out of stables have really torn this up over time. Alright, now we're getting ready to cut out the area here for this window on the top. We're actually going to turn that into a stained glass window. And I'm cutting this out because I want to have light behind the window when I'm done. And again, whenever you're working with something like this and you can have a lot of fumes, work outside. That way those fumes you see right there aren't an issue. I'm working under a hood in my shop. And then there you can see I added some stone texture to the base. And here we go, back to some more Shiftinglands shingles. These things are awesome. I was first introduced to these in my haunted house video and fell in love with them. And all you have to do is really just build a rectangular piece flat on your workstation first. And then you can trace out exactly, as you can see right there, what you need for the shingles. And it just cuts out nice and easy with a pair of scissors. And they look fantastic. And here are some smaller shingles, same design, just smaller. And I thought it would be nice to cap off that little ridgeline with those. And we'll make use of some more of them here in just a minute. Now this is where it starts to take a little bit more time working with the shingles. Anytime you're working with shingles, you know, it's a little bit of a tedious project, but you're gonna wanna place those, you know, piece by piece on there using wood glue. And once you've dry fitted everything again, you know it's gonna fit perfectly. Again, I hate waiting for any type of tacky glue or something to set up. So a little bit of hot glue, press that in place, and you can keep moving on. And for this piece right here, I've just placed all these individually. I didn't make a big square. I want to try and save on some of the shingles. And again, you can see how at times it is a little bit tedious working with them because you have to place them piece by piece, but again, it's a really nice look overall when you're done. And this is what I was talking about earlier about covering up any type of, you know, angle that you might have messed up cutting that roof line up. You've got plenty of different opportunities to correct that with the large shingles, with the small shingles, and so on. Alright, now I thought this would be really cool to cover up the seam line for the shingles. And, you know, I looked at it at first and said, oh, you know, I mean, I could leave that, but anytime you can cover up a seam where things meet, it always looks like a neater, cleaner build. So that's what I'm doing here. And I just wanted to cross these beams here at the end. I thought that looked kind of neat. Again, just covering up some beams. I cut this rectangular piece out, placing it sort of at an angle. That way it lines up flush right there on the bottom where my left hand is along the build. Alright, now we're going to place a magnet on top here, and the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to do something very specific in this video that's going to show this piece off as a stable. But as I mentioned earlier, you know, this can be used for anything. It could be a guild hall, it could be a library. So by making this piece modular on the top, you can really sell this building as a different build. By removing what you're about to see here in just a minute, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Alright, some more awesome designed just for this video pieces from Shiftinglands. We got some Horseshoe Trim. I thought that was really neat. I'm going to place this up underneath here. Again, making sure that's just on that square piece of foam on top with the magnet, because again, we want that to be able to be removed when we're done. Alright, now we're going to glue this white piece of circular foam on, not the horse piece, into this window. Again, that will also be able to be removed, so you can replace that window very easily with a nice standard stained glass window, or another design for any other building that you'd like. We're going totally modular with this build right here. Alright, and same deal for these. I'm just removing the windows now to make it easier to paint, but these smaller round windows will be glued into place here in just a few minutes. Alright, so now I'm going a little dramatic here with the lighting for just a minute, because I was actually filming a live stream with Jay's Tabletop Terrain over on Instagram. Really great guy. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out on Instagram. But I had to adjust the lighting so I wasn't all blown out while we're doing the live stream. But all I'm doing right here is cutting out the footprint for the grid pattern on this first floor. And you can see up top towards the two magnets, you know, I don't have a grid pattern. That doesn't fit exactly perfectly, but you don't have to cover every square inch of your interior with the grid pattern. Just keep that in mind. Alright, now we're on to the Mod Podge portion of the build. Make sure to coat everything, especially coat the little pieces of foam that we're using on the ridge line of the roof. Now you can pause the video here to see all the different colors that I'm using. Bottom right is a mixture of that blue that I'm using with some black in it. Now the floor of the stable is going to be made out of stone. Using these colors, we're just going to blotch them in place. It's going to look really cool once we're done. Mix them up, go crazy with it. And we're going to hit this up with a black wash and then a highlight of some parchment color when we're done, and it's going to look really nice. Here we're using the original blue, and then to highlight we're going to mix in some warm gray or light tan. I'm not using white, so we're going to use that to mix these up in here. That was a suggestion of Sam Lenz, so if you haven't checked him out, fantasy artist Sam Lenz, check him out on YouTube as well. Alright, same deal goes for the blue on this section. I'm doing some pretty heavy dry brush over all this, and I'm just slowly going lighter and lighter, and I'm not trying to hit every square inch of this roof line. Having it a little bit sporadic really adds to the overall look of this build. Alright, now I want to thank Anycubic. They provided this brand new Anycubic Viper FTM printer. This thing was absolutely amazing, super easy. I had it set up out of the box in about an hour. Self-leveling. You just got to take your file that was right here, was produced by TigerSkullRPG for me for the very top of the stable. Again, thank you to Tiger Skull for that. Once I had this all done, the Viper, super easy to print this thing off. Even with these supports, came out really nice. Popped the supports off, and I was ready to go. Software that I used was Cura, that was for that. Again, super easy to work with. I'll put a link up above to another video that I had where I used an Anycubic Photon Mono. If you want to go that route instead, you can use that as well. Now, once I popped those supports off, I just used a file just to file some of those down, and I was good to go. Now, this is actually like a little chess piece that TigerSkullRPG had designed. And I asked if I could use this piece. We're going to use this for the top of the stable. And just doing some washes and dry brushes on here. I'm going to make this look like almost like an ivory or an old piece of wood that was carved out and is placed on the very top of the stable. The rim on that I painted gold. And then we're going to add just a little bit more trim around the top of this to pretty it up a little bit. And I used some tacky glue to hold that in place. Actually, I used some wood glue, as you can see in the background right there, to hold it in place. And I used a lot of that in my haunted house video as well. Now, I want to put a wash on this. I did not want to use a straight up black wash. I didn't want to dirty this up. I used a little bit of black wash, and as you can see right there, I added blue ink. That's going to add a blue hue to the black wash, kind of really transforming it, and it really was a nice change than just using a straight up black wash. Came out really nice, and when you brush that on, I like to use a paper towel to dry the brush, soak up any areas where there's way too much wash, and clean that up a little bit. It really came up nice, especially later on once we did our final dry brush. And the same as the blue wash, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. I did the same thing here, but instead of blue, I added some of that red ink into the black wash, and that came out really nice as well. And I used that same reddish wash to wash this wood right here. It came out really nice. And for my highlights on the red, I added again that warm gray or some of that tan, and it turns a little pink, but that's okay because this obviously is wood that's been painted. And when it's been in the sun for a while, that's what's going to happen. It's going to fade, so it fit just right. Alright, now using that combination right there of paint, that's going to be our final dry brush over the shingles and all of our blue sections on the build. And again, you don't want to hit every single square inch of this with that. It's nice to have some areas a little bit darker than others. And right here, this is a good example of not hitting every square inch with your highlights either. Just in the very center of the red pattern here on the left and right, you can see right there around that round window, just a little bit of bright light blue. Looks really nice. And the same goes for the red. Now, earlier in the video, just a minute or two ago, we used a Nuln oil to wash all of these bronze pillars. Now I'm using some straight gold paint by Vallejo to highlight those. And that really is going to stand out once you go around and hit just the tips of all those pieces of all those pillars. Alright, I'll put a link up above to my window video to see how I made these windows with the clear backing, the frosted backing. I'll also put a link to my alchemy shop, which will show you how to make the stained glass window as well. Alright, now we can finally start gluing some of these windows in. I used just a little bit of Eileen's tacky glue on the top and bottom just to hold them in place. You don't need much. Alright, now here for the door, a little hot glue again. There is the option to have this door open and close, but I opted just to kind of glue this one in place. Alright, now you can see how this window is going to snap right into place without any glue. It's not going to come out. And it's going to allow us to remove that and replace it with another window once we modify and change this to look like something else. Now, just when you think you're all done, I completely forgot to put the entire front of this building on. I was all done, I stepped back and looked at it, and I'm like, where is the front of this building? So, we had to start kind of all over, another little mini build. On the plans, it'll show you exactly, all these cuts here for this little piece of foam. You can kind of just wing this a little bit. It's a very simple addition, and it feels flimsy at first, but once you get all the foam on here, you add your shingles, it definitely sturdies up. You don't want to drop it, but it definitely needed this piece on the front of the building. It looked a lot different once that was done. And we're also going to add a nice angle support underneath that L section of wood here in just a minute. You can see it right there. And once that's all set and ready to go, we've made another couple slabs of shingles, and we're just going to hot glue those right into place. And then we're going to paint this up exactly the same way that we painted the rest of the building. And then finally, again, check out, I'll put a link up above to my haunted house video where I'll show you exactly how to make these lanterns. And I'll also put a link to my easy LED wiring video. This might look intimidating, but I assure you it is extremely easy and extremely awesome to be able to turn on up to 4 of these LEDs with one switch when you're done. It's another aspect of crafting that, is a lot of fun, and I guarantee you once you've done it once, you're gonna say, how come I haven't done this for years? Alright, and there's 5mm diodes in there that can be turned on and off simply by flicking that one switch right there. So we got 2 lanterns on the front and a couple of windows in each side of this build that are going to flicker. Alright, what's going to be my next building in my medieval village? It's up to you. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see, and I'll look them all over and take them all into consideration. Now, you might have noticed a little bit of time between my last video and this one, and that's because I'm slowing down my crafts just a little bit So I could actually take the time and attention needed to put into all these crafts to really get the quality out of them that I want. And I'm finding that I'm really liking the way that my stuff is turning out. So let me know what you think of that down below, if you're cool with me spending a little bit more time to really amp up the quality of the crafts and the videos. If you want to win a set of plans, don't forget, follow me on Instagram, leave a like and a comment down below. And if you're enjoying the videos, please consider heading on over to Patreon. Over there, you can help support the channel, and in return, you get something cool like a set of plans emailed to you, or you can hang out with me live while I'm filming these videos on Discord. All right, until next time, I'll see you around.